So just like that, like a bad dream, I'm back again. So it's Sunday. Last night we left off. We were working on the heads for our motor, our Vini motor for our funny car. And I'm out in the garage this morning where I keep the race car, the one main car. And kind of excited this morning. Wanted to go over with you guys. Going to switch gears a little bit. We talked a little bit on one episode. I was pulling the seat out of the car and the belts out, send them out to Taylor to get those the belts recertified and to get my flame retardant seat cover made. That's required by both NHRA and IHRA. Again, this car was being built that never seen the track, and unfortunately the owner passed away. And it switched hands a few times. A few people have bought it to strip it for the motor, transmission, and so forth. And it's very similar to the original funny car that I started this venture out with. The other Dodge Avenger that I traded off the rump shaker, blown alcohol altered to get started. And then, we all know I went through my funk and got a little discouraged and abruptly sold the funny car because it just wasn't coming together fast enough because I have no patience. But all in all, the Lord works in mysterious ways. Got rid of one, and we ended up with this one at a pretty good deal. And as you guys know, my brother has jumped in the venture with me, and that's helped out a lot tremendously on the financial strains of trying to run this, because it was crazy trying to do it with one person. I mean, it's crazy trying to do it with two people, but it was even totally insane trying to do it just as one. So anyway, we got that seat out, and the belts were brand new, but they were dated 2020, and they just sat. So Dennis at Taylor Motorsports said send them out, and we'll redo them. Plus, we have to add another point. They changed. This car had regular 5-point harness, and they moved up to a 6-point. And I think they add they add a second point to where the crotch strap comes up. So he's going to take care of that for us. But anyway, I needed to get something started on the transmission. So we went to buy this car. He still had the transmission. He sold the motor that was in the car. It had a Noonan motor in it that was sold and blown up, and went to a pro mod racer. And I'm actually in touch with him, just keeping up with what's been going on with him. The motor actually had a lot of mismatched pieces in it. It wasn't as great as what they thought it was, but that's a whole nother story for another day. And I'm just going by hearsay, what was told by the guy that bought the drivetrain. The gentleman I bought the car from had the transmission. Don't know if it was the transmission that was in the car. It had a conventional Lenco, your run-of-the-mill standard drivetrain for an alcohol funny car. It was a 3-speed Lenco. It had a titanium clutch can, and it had a 3-speed pedal clutch. It was an older pedal clutch. It was a Hayes clutch, which Hayes is no longer in business as far as I believe, or they're not manufacturing high-performance 3-disc funny car clutches anymore. But it had the adjustable stands, and we told them, we said, well, give me a few months, maybe I'll come back and buy that. And, being it was in the car, supposedly was in the car, everything was there. So went back and forth with the owner over the last few months and just couldn't get together on a price. And I was really, really on the fence if I wanted to go with a clutch, because clutches are maintenance. And yeah, they're totally adjustable, but not being familiar with how to set up a clutch, and don't get me wrong, I got some good people that'll work with me, that'll guide me through on how to get the clutch set up. But here was my theory. Always got my theories. I looked around a lot at this, and I look around at, funny cars used to be, as far as I was concerned, pretty close to the top of the food chain, next to a top fuel car, where most of the technology went through those cars first, and then had the trickle down effect through the other classes. Well, Pro Modified is so popular, along with No Prep Racing and Radial Against the World, and what is some of that other the Street Kings or whatever that stuff's called. But there's a lot of serious horsepower door cars out there, and a lot of main technology is being innovated through those classes. And you look at those cars, and 95% of them are converter equipped. Now, they're not converter equipped with a regular old automatic transmission anymore. They're using quick drives or Bruno's, Mike M&M transmission with his famous 2-speed, Lenco drives, and those guys are just running some tremendous times. And converter technology has grown leaps and bounds over the last couple decades. So I started thinking about that. I started looking at clutches, and I look at a lot of guys that run funny cars, and I'd say the median age of guys that are running funny cars are generally a little older guys that have been in it a long time. I don't see as much new blood coming into the funny car classes as you do some of the no prep and, I mean, look at Pro Mod, or the guys that came out of Street Outlaws, Kai Kelly, and I don't know much about that. I just know some names. The Big Chief guy, the Museys. They came out of that Street Outlaws, and a lot of them moved into Pro Mod now. And every one of those guys are running a converter-equipped car. And, serious converters, bolt together, billet converters where you can change stators and have adjustability. But I don't see a lot of clutches out there. Again, I still see a lot of clutches in funny cars, and I'm imagining the reason a lot of guys still run clutches is because that's the way they've been doing it forever. That's what they know. So why do they want to switch? A clutch when it's locked up is fast. There's no doubt about that. But I'm low buck. I can't afford to do things once, let alone 2 and 3 times over. So I kept gravitating towards wanting to run a converter-equipped Lenco. And looked around, and the prices were just prohibitive because they're so damn high. Well, as it would have, and the Lord does things in mysterious ways, a good buddy of mine that I actually used to build motors for his circle track cars got into drag cars and befriended another guy that went down to Texas and bought a Pro Mod. And he bought a Pro Mod with the intentions to detune it to make a fast bracket car out of it. Well, he called me up. He said, Mark, I got this transmission. I don't really know what it is, but it looks expensive. And he brought it over, and lo and behold, it's a Lenco drive. It's a 3-speed Lenco set up for a converter. And it didn't have the converter, but it was in a Pro Mod with a Ford engine, a big block Ford. But it had the blanket, and it had a brow safety bell housing, but with the bolt pattern of a Ford. Obviously, that's not going to work for us. So I started kicking around the idea if I could pick this thing up fairly reasonable, and called the guy back that we got the funny car from, and he still had the transmission. I said, listen, man, I got a couple of hustles I'm knocking out. I was going to let kind of my numbers make my decision. I said, what do you want for that used 3-speed, the Hayes clutch, and the bell housing? Well, he was stuck on $6,500, and that was just out of the question for me. So my buddy Keith, that had this Lenco drive from his friend that pulled it out to put a power glide in the car, why he wouldn't wanted to kept this, because these are bulletproof. I ended up buying this transmission this weekend for $3,000. It was supposedly just freshened up by Lenco. As you can see, it's a magnesium case, and it does have some oxidation on it. Magnesium does oxidize pretty quick. I'm going to clean it up today, but it was under that blanket, so they hold moisture. Car came out of Texas, so I don't know. It's pretty dry air down there, but like I said, magnesium does oxidize quick. My main thing was one, affordability. It was 3 things: affordability, performance, and maintenance. I know a converter-equipped car is going to have a lot less maintenance than a clutch car. And me not being an expert on clutches, well, what the hell's the difference? Every drag car I've ever had has either had a Power Glide or a Turbo 400 in it, except really early on when I had some manual shift 4-speed cars, like Muncie transmission cars, and that's a whole different kind of manual transmission. But a Lenco transmission and a Lenco drive basically is the same. For those that don't know, these are planetary style transmissions, and I'll just give a little quick theory on, or not theory, of what a planetary transmission is. They all utilize the rear, and the rear housing is your reverse, and your high gear pack, which would be, your reverse is 1-to-1, your high gear is 1-to-1. So how this works, each planetary gear housing is a gear ratio. So you see the air pods. Now these are for the air shifters. Now normally, like in an old door car and a pro stock, they would have linkage and levers where you would, have the lightning rods to pull this back, and they would have a single lever back here to go in the reverse, neutral, and forward. Well, in the funny car, we use air pods. We use the air shifter, and these are solenoid valves. You see the air lines, and they hook up right there on the steering wheel to shift. Another thing I like about the converter-equipped car is staging the car. I mean, yeah, it's cool with a clutch to hold that clutch in, hold the brake, ease in, bring the revs up to 7,000, snap that clutch out. But I do see a lot of guys that have trouble getting down the track on every pass with the clutch. And as far as leaving with the Lenco drive, as you notice, there's a transmission pan under it, so it has a valve body. So now it's going to be leaving off a trans brake. And if you look at most pro mods, again, and most of the top-end fast street cars, radial against the world, they're all leaving off trans brakes. The M&M transmission, what's that, Mickey, is that what his name is? Those are trans brake equipped transmissions. And, a torque converter is just that. It's a torque multiplier. Again, we're going to be doing a lot of 8th mile racing. So I think in the 8th mile, I feel the converter-equipped car is going to have an advantage. Now, maybe in the 1/4 mile, where the converter is going to get a little slippage on the top side, and the clutch is totally locked in, the clutch might have an advantage still up through the 1/4 mile. But again, let's talk about technology. Converter technology is still wide open. It's something that's still being developed by many companies. A lot of people, high-end people, are running them to give feedback. A lot of improvement year to year. Clutch technology, is that really growing, or is that something that's kind of stagnant? Might have some people that argue with me. I think the clutch technology is stagnant. I think, maybe the materials on the disc in certain ways, maybe they're finishing them and patterns for grinding the discs and floaters, but I think that's kind of came to a head a long time ago. I don't think, let's say, if it is growing technology-wise, I think the converter technology is growing a hell of a lot harder, farther, and faster than clutch technology. Right now, there's a converter-equipped top alcohol dragster. I believe that holds the record for a converter-equipped car in the 1/4 mile. I believe the times are in the high 520s. So that's promising, to say the least. But so we're going to go with the Lenco Drive converter-equipped alcohol funny car. I already found a bell housing. I needed a bell housing. Found a guy out in California over the weekend. Found it on, I think, it was either Racing Junk or Inside Top Alcohol. Found a bell housing for $300. So I'm going to be into this transmission, $3,300, but have to get a converter. So I'm not sure yet. I'm going to make some phone calls. I'm going to call Neil Chance. I'm going to call Circle D. I'm going to call Greg Slack. I'm going to call PTC. And I'm going to see who wants to work with me on a torque converter. But let's go back to the planetary gear set. How does a planetary gear set work? Why do they call it planetary? And we're not talking about astronomy, or are we? Well, the reason they call it planetary is because the way these gear sets work, there's a center gear. The center gear is called a sun gear. Now, the sun gear is in conjunction right with the output and input shaft. Okay, and I haven't had this apart, but I'm imagining the sun gear is attached on the center of the shaft. Now, the sun gear is in the middle. The planetary gears revolve around the sun gear, and again, I haven't had it apart, but I imagine there's at least 3 planetary gears. Maybe there's 4 in there. I don't know. The planetary gears revolve around the sun gear, and on the outside, there's a ring gear with teeth on the inside. The ring gear, I guess, would be considered like your solar system. I guess you'd call that. I don't know. I used to get D's in science, you know, so don't quote me on that. Made it out of high school, but barely. Graduated in 1990. But anyway, that's the theory of a planetary gear set. Sun's in the middle. Planets revolve around the outside. And everything turns inside the ring gear. All planetary gear, I mean, it's cool. All planetary gear sets, there's automatically 2 speeds. Because as the shaft is spinning, the planetary gears turn between the gears in the ring gear and the sun gear. And the ring gear could either be locked for 1 gear ratio, or when the ring gears let go, now it's all spinning again. Now the planetaries are turning along the ring gear to the inside. So that's how this works. And every Lenco, like I said, every gear case is a planetary setup. So if I wanted to make this a 4-speed Lenco, I could call up and I could order another gear set. I want to make it a 5-speed, so on and so on and so forth. But this is a 3-speed. The end's the reverser. Like a top fuel car would still have this piece on their car. It would still have the reverser, you know, output shaft where your drive shaft goes to your rear, and then the bell housing and the coupler would just bolt to this end. So you'd have your you know, forward 1-to-1. This is like an in and out box is all this is, but it has the reverse. Planetary gear set, second planetary gear set, along with a hydraulic pump to hold the valve body so we could have a trans brake. So, and that's what's going to make this thing launch so hard. So my theory is. But the main thing was buying a used transmission. It came out of the door car. It came out of a nitrous-equipped big-inch Ford motor. I don't know what the gear ratio is. And I called Lenco, and they said really the only way to tell 100% is to pull it apart, count the teeth, divide, multiply, you know, the teeth count, and you can come up with your gear set. And that's cool. I don't have no problem taking things apart to see how they tick. That's something I've did most of my life. But right now, I want to see what the gear ratios are to see if I'm even close to being where I need to be. What is the optimum gear ratio? Well, we don't know. Because first of all, we got a motor that's going to make less horsepower than a conventional top alcohol funny car. And we got kind of a small inch motor. So right now, what I was thinking to try to figure out what the gear ratio was, I went ahead and took an old degree wheel out of the shop and got a little magnet on the output shaft there, and this attached one of my old extra degree wheels. I paint marked the output shaft here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to spin this a complete revolution, and I'm going to see how many times this spins around to the output shaft. And yeah, I mean, if it spun, let's say I spin the output shaft even without the degree wheel, if I spin the output shaft one complete revolution and this degree wheel spins 1.5 times, well, it'll be a 1.5 ratio. But there are a lot of ratios. I mean, there's hundreds of ratios Lencos have. I mean, 150, 157, 160, 162. So I figured by having a degree wheel, I could go ahead and mathematically figure a lot closer to what the ratios are. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to sit out here in the sun. Nice day today. We're out here in the yard. We're not in the machine shop yet. I just want to soak up some sun. I'm going to mess around with this Lenco a little bit, and then later on I'm going to get in the shop, and we're going to go back to working on those heads. I got a yard full of crap here. It's getting nice. My wife's like, you need to get the motors built for the boat so we can play with that a little bit and enjoy that. And you know, poor wagon's sitting there, but you can only do so much. This happens when you're a gearhead. I'm not one to sit around and watch TV. If I'm up, I'd like to be doing something. But right now, the funny car is taking precedence on what I want to get done, you know. And probably shouldn't have bought that boat, but it was such a deal. It was a stolen recovery. I think I talked about that in another video. The motors were stolen out of it, and I got it on a deal. And I used to mess around with performance boats. I thought it would be cool to have something to knock around on when we're not racing. So, but that's a whole other story. So we're gonna play with this right now and try to figure out what the gear ratios are and see if we're close, you know, because we get that bell housing this week, talk to a converter guy, and if the gear ratios are close enough to get started, get that motor done in about a week or so. Now we've got a transmission to go in there to transmit some power. So what I'll have to do is, I got the air line out here, the compressor back here in the shop. I'm gonna hold the air line, I'll have to shoot some air in here to activate these solenoid valves to pick up the gear ratio, to lock it in. So I'm gonna do that now, and I just thought I'd show you what was going on this morning. I'm gonna play with that while it's nice and sunny out here and see what those ratios are. But that's where we're going. We're gonna be a converter equipped funny car, leaving on a trans brake, leaving on a button with a Lenco drive. So thanks to my buddy Keith Ward for hooking us up. One more piece of the puzzle at a cut rate price. So, all right, fellas. Well, enjoy your rest of your Sunday. I'll get back at you when we get to work on those heads either later today or first of the week. Take care.